From stampwithlorraine.com, and I have a fun fold for you again today, which is sometimes called an angled fold card, or it's actually a tri-fold card, and I'd like to share that with you. I usually do pastel colors, earth tones. Those are sort of like what I tend to go toward, but I'm working out of my box today, and I went with some nice bright colors, so I can't wait to show you what these are all going to look like. They're all a little bit different. You know me, I show you very varied ways of doing the same project. So what we're going to start with today is this one in Gorgeous Grape. Uses some DSP that you can get for free with celebrations from now until the end of September 2021, and it goes with some of the stamp sets that we have in the main catalog. So keep following along on the tutorial and you'll see 4 variations on the same fold. Okay, so we're starting off, our card base is starting off at 5.5 by 11, and we're going to score it at some odd numbers here. We're going to score it at 3 3/8. So that's just before 3.5, obviously. Okay, on your score, make sure you're using the gray one. You don't want to cut by accident. Been there, done that before. And then you're also going to score at 7 5/8. But if you don't want to remember that number, just turn it around and score it at 3 3/8 again. That works too. And that way, you're left with 4 1/4 in the middle of your card. That's the back of your card. That's your card base. So it's kind of a trifold, right? So it's 3 3/8 on both sides, or 3 3/8 and then 7 5/8. Whatever you like to do and how you want to think about it. Sometimes me remembering one number is easier. 3 3/8 on both sides. So either way works. Okay. So keep your trimmer handy because we're going to do some cutting in a minute. So let's burnish those score lines. Love my bone folder for that. And you'll see how they overlap. So that's why you're starting off with the 11 instead of your normal card measurements. All right, they are going to overlap a little bit. Okay, so now that where the angle comes in is we're going to make an angle down this way and an angle this way. And then the opposite direction on the other side. So I'm going to show you how to cut that. So bringing your trimmer back in, push the scoring tool out of the way, and we're going to line up the first score line. Let's do the one on the right side first. We're going to be making a diagonal cut down to the right side. So we're cutting off that top corner. So we're going to line up that crease in the channel of your trimmer. Okay, and we're going to angle it in such a way that your tip goes to 1 1/2. All right, so you want to make sure you're at the fold is in the channel, that little channel there where your blade would go, and go to 1 1/2. Now my trimmer goes to 1 1/2. Some trimmers might not go that far. If that's the case, just flip the card over and you can do it in the other direction. Okay, so you would have your fold there and just keep turning it until the point reaches the 1 1/2 line. So you have to do just a little wiggling till it reaches 1 1/2. All right, carefully hold it in place, and we're going to cut that angle off. Okay, and then we're going to rotate the card so the point that we just created on the outside edge of the card is now in the channel. And this time we want the bottom of the card to go to 1. Okay, so that corner is going to meet the 1-inch line. So make sure it's still in the point up here is still right in the center of that channel. You want to be as precise as you can. so that the next part things line up as best as possible. Okay, and I like to start my cut from a straight edge rather than a point because sometimes you could smush the point. Okay, so now we're going to take that one away. You might be able to do a fun little graphic card with those pieces. You know I will try it. You know me. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing, but just on the other side so it looks symmetrical. All right. Okay, so if you do have the 1.5 on the other side, you can do it that direction, or just flip it over and do it on the other side the same way we did. Really doesn't matter. Dampen Up trimmer does go to 1.5. So it gives you that little extra to hold over here, and you can cut your do your smaller measurements here. So that's one thing I really like. Okay, then we're just going to rotate it. So this point stays in the channel, and this point goes to 1. And then we'll cut that off. Okay, so it almost makes, an arch in a way. Okay, just with some straight edges. Okay, so now they're going to fold over like this. Kind of reminds me of a shirt or a bit of a bathrobe, actually, how it overlaps, right? So anyway, now we'll be using the trimmer for designer series paper next. So keep that handy. We're going to cut a piece that's going to match up and lay over here. Now, there are different things you can do. You can put the designer paper on both sides of here. You can do it on one side and decorate this in another way. Of course, many options. There's no fast, hard rule that you need to keep up with. And of course, I'll show you different options. So let me show you how to cut this, because obviously you want it to have a little bit of a border. Now, this part can be a little tricky. Sometimes it works out just fine. Sometimes I have to do a little adjusting. And that's where being really precise the first time and cutting the DSP comes in handy. Okay, so you're starting with your DSP. I'm going to choose this little funky scallop design. And just to show you that if you do have a design that you want in a certain direction, make sure that you figure that out ahead of time. If you had this one, it doesn't matter which direction you cut it because it's just a random flower, right? So with something like this, I wanted the scallops to be horizontal. Then you also have to think, okay, do you want them bumps or do you want them looking more like little waves? So I think I'm going to have them going this way. And so that's how I'm going to remember to cut. Of course, this designer paper comes, you could cut it so that they go this way too, if you wanted more vertical. So you have to think that out ahead of time. And by the way, the paper we're using is what you can get for free with celebrations, and it's the beautifully penned designer series paper. You get 3 different patterns. You get 4 of each of the different patterns. So, and they coordinate with the hand-penned petals. They are sort of black and white versions of the hand-penned designer series paper. Okay, so very similar, but just all in black and white, because that's been really popular lately. People are loving that look. And of course, there are the dies that coordinate with that too. So there are a lot of things. Some of the celebrations, they tie into some of the things that are in the main catalog. But of course, you don't need those things. You can work with this alone, as you see I'll be doing here. Here are the reverse. You have more of a graphic look. Black lines, beautiful flowers. Isn't that pretty? I love the dots in there. And then this has just the little dots there. Very fun. So I'll show you some examples with all of those papers in just a little bit. So stay tuned. Okay, so now to get the piece that's going to fit in here. So you're starting off with 5 1/4 by 3 1/4. Let me just check that these are all correct. Yep. Okay, so we're going to do a similar thing that we did with the cardstock. So bringing the trimmer back in, we're going to do those same kind of angles. So put one corner. You want to think about where this is going to be. So this is the top corner. I want them as little, the loops going down like waves, so to speak. So I'm going to start from, this is going to be my top corner. I'm going to cut down here to 1.5. So I'm going to keep the paper oriented the same way. Put that in the little groove, the channel there, and rotate it until this tip gets to 1.5. And like I said, the more precise you are in cutting your card base and this, it should work out okay, but you can always do a little adjusting later. Sometimes I don't know why, but sometimes I've had trouble getting it just right. And I guess that's just bound to happen. I tried saying, well, move this over a 16th or whatever. And I just figured, okay, it's just sometimes easier to adjust it at the end. Okay, so I'm doing that. I'm going to cut that. All right, so let's just do a little test. I'm going to try it out over here. And I'm going to give it a little bit of border. And I'm seeing that's looking good. Okay, this angle's good, and this is good. Now, do you see how here, this point, if I went from this point down, it's not going to give me a little bit of a border. So here's where adjusting it just maybe, a 1/16 of an inch or a little bit over is going to be helpful. So if this makes any sense, let me get this piece out of the way. I want to start cutting this a little bit in from that point. So the way my groove works, there's a little bit of thickness on the end of the side of that channel. So I am actually putting my tip there. So that might be like a 1/16 of an inch. And then I'm going to adjust my other corner down to 1. Okay, and that's going to give me that little border on this end. Okay, I just found for me that works best. I'm going to bring my cutter down again. And I'm going to slide it up. Okay, so now let's check it out and see. Okay, so that worked pretty well. It's a little tiny bit off here. Depends how picky you want to be. This design is kind of random, these random angles here and there. It's up to you how much that bothers you, but I will just show you how you can just trim that a little bit and cut that off. So I noticed it need a little trimming down at the bottom, so I'm going to line it up and just trim that a little bit. I'm going to put this was fine up here, but this down here I'm going to just cut a little bit off. Sometimes it works perfectly for some reason, and sometimes it doesn't. No, the first time around is what I'm saying. So I don't know. So by just doing that, I've made it work a little bit better. Okay? Sometimes a little adjustment's needed. So now let's do the other side. So I'm going to go from the top left this time down. So again, I'm going from in the groove to 1.5. Cut that off. And again, I want to go in just a little bit. So I'm going to go on the outside channel here so that I can start my cut a little bit more in here, if that makes sense. And then I'm going to go to my 1. And I might give it just a tiny bit more. I might err on the side of giving a little bit more since I had to cut off a little bit more the last time. Just a hair sometimes makes that difference. All right, let's see how it fits. The moment of truth. Yay, there we go. Pretty good. Well, this time I do have to trim a little bit more off the top, so maybe I didn't have to do it that time. See, sometimes it's just that little bit, and it depends how picky you are. If it's sort of like a different angles, wonky look, maybe it won't matter. Most people won't notice. We're just the worst critics of our own stuff. Okay, so there we go, and we're going to glue those on. Making sure you get to the tips, because the sides, you know, as long as you have some glue on there, they will stay down, but it's the tips that might catch on something. So you want to make sure that those have enough adhesive on it. Okay, if you see your paper from where you cut it, sometimes you see that little lip sticking up, just take your fingernail or your bone folder and slide it down, and it will get that back down again. I see just a little piece of paper there. I'll get that later. I might be needing a new blade on my trimmer. Okay, this is Gorgeous Grape. All right, so there are a variety of things you can do on the inside. I am going to put my white paper there, but first I'm going to stamp a little flower on there. If you want, you could put the reverse DSP in here, and I'll show you examples of that. You can leave it blank if you like. For this version, I'm going to just do some background stamping on there. So I am going to first do, let me see if I want that full strength. Sure. Do a little flower down there for the inside. And I'm going to just do some background stamping on this one. That's because I did different things on the other ones. Okay, when you do, I'm going to do a variety of images on here. So start with your biggest ones first. And it's okay if I go across here because that's going to cover. And then I'm going to do a few of the leaves. This is from the Colors and Contour. Just to bring something to the inside so it doesn't look so plain. And then I'm going to use the little speckles just to stamp off and then do some lighter speckles. So they all come from the Color and Contour. The flower, the little squiggly leaf, and the speckles. Okay, so I'm going to stamp off and then just do a couple little background things to fill in the space. Can you see that? There you go. Close up my ink pad. So that's Gorgeous Grape on Gorgeous Grape. Okay, then we'll glue down the center. Okay, so that's kind of our fun card. Now, it doesn't stay closed very well, so different options for holding it together. We can do a belly band. So you would want a strip that's 10 inches long. So let me get, I think I'll do black. We want it 1 inch by 10. Or did I do 9? I don't remember. I think I started out 10. It's possible you could make do with 9, but doesn't matter. It's going to overlap anyway. All right, and then you want to score it at 2 1/4. And I'm just going to score it on one side because if I score it on the other side, it might be a little tight depending on the thickness of your card. Okay, maybe if you have extra layers in here, it's going to feel thicker, and then those score lines won't be, you know, all the same for whatever your card is. So I do one side, so I have a nice crease, and then I just wrap it around and meet up the ends. Okay, and then that obviously fits, and then it will easily slide up and down and hold that card closed. So you want this to be pretty secure, so use either your glue or more heavy-duty adhesive, because that part can pop open easily if you don't use anything that is very secure. So I like to, since I don't want to wait for the glue to dry, I'm going to use my tear tape. And of course you want to be careful that you're not putting the tape where it's going to show. So the part that's inside, I put a little bit right here. And I'll cut that. I have my certain scissors for the sticky jobs. And then I'll put another one on here. So that way I know they're cut. Both sides are glued down. And it's going to be covered just fine. Okay, pull off the backing and put it together. Then here's where you can add punches, die cuts, sentiments, whatever you like, however you want to decorate your card. Okay, so after we have our inside done, stamped the way we want, I think I'll add a little bit of yellow to that center of that flower, just to bring a little something in. I'm just going to dot a little bit in there. I don't want to smear that ink with my alcohol markers, my Stampin' Blends. This is also the Dark Daffodil Delight. We don't have crushed curry, so close enough for the colors I'm using today. Okay, we made our belly band, so now we have to decorate it, right? So I'm using one of the largest stitched So Sweetly labels. I am using the color and contour, as you know, on the inside, so I think I'll use that on the outside as well. Now the dies that come with that have little cutout label frames as well, but I just thought this one was too small. This one, they were just a little too scallopy. I already have scallops here. I didn't want to overdo it. I wanted something a little more clean around the edges, so that's why I chose this one. It just has the stitched. So yeah, it is sort of rounded. It gives me some tie-in to the curves here, but just not so scallopy. I just thought it was too much. So we're going to decorate this, and we're going to continue using the contour and color stamp set. I'm going to use the sentiment, thank you for everything. Going to stamp that in Memento Black on the side of my label. Right there. Okay, so I'm going to stamp my flower. I'm going to keep this little mark at the top so I know how to line up the next part. I'm going to do 2 flowers. I believe they'll fit here. There we go. And then I'll do the other with Highland Heather. Our card base is Gorgeous Grape, so I just want a slightly different tone on this. And this stamp also has that little magic marker, Sharpie marker up there, so I know that's the top that I line up with that. Makes it just a little bit easier. Okay, so do that, and there we go. And it's not a whole lot different from that shade, but it is slightly less. If you wanted to, you could stamp off first, but not necessary right now. Oops. Okay, so now I'm going to die cut that out. Okay, so I die cut out my flowers. It is helpful to have a spot on here too to line up with those parts. Then we can flip that right onto our card, and it's a beautiful belly band to hold it shut. Go, look how cute that is. I love it. Absolutely love it. So let me show you some other designs. Okay, here's one I did in Granny Apple Green with the same designer paper. This time I put a different pattern on the inside, took a teeny tiny strip that I had left over, stuck that down as a border, and put the daisy on the inside from Daisy Lane stamp set, and put that little guy there. And I used 2 daisy punches to create my focal point on the front. And what I happened to do on this one, I happened to have a piece of white cardstock that had the bark embossing on it, and I said, gee, I wonder how that would look punching the daisy out of there, and it gave it some nice texture. So I really love that. I have 2 big daisies and 1 small one, so I'm just going to work these a little bit so that they curve up to give it a little bit more depth. more like a real flower would have. Curl the edges a little bit away from each other, and it looks a little bit more realistic on there. Okay, so now I have my belly band. Now here's an example where you don't want to necessarily just put a score line on each side, a measured score line, because I have the extra thickness here. It wouldn't fit the same as if I did not have that extra thickness. So I've already put my tear tape on here. I'm going to go ahead, tear that off. If you have trouble grabbing it, use the take your pick tool, and you can get that off pretty easily, just like that, and start it. Some people like using those for their dimensionals also. You can see I've already pre-planned my dimensionals here, so my flower can go right on there. So I'll take these off. And I will put my daisy right on there. So nice and simple, a nice little smile, right? Okay, so recipient will take that off. You see a beautiful card inside. Here's yet another example. Crushed curry, made the belly band as well. Used a smaller label from the Stitch So Sweetly label dies, and I used the cutouts from the penned flowers. That goes with a hand-penned petal set. So I cut these little guys, this, and one of these, and one of these. You get several, so you can make a little bouquet if you like. So glued that on there, popped it up with dimensional dots. So, and I only used, as you can see, designer paper on one side. On the other side, I actually embossed it just to have something different. Isn't it beautiful? I just thought this color and the black, usually I think fall colors. Well, I said, you know what? I'm just going bright and cheery this time. I used the hammered metal 3D embossing folder. And again, it's not always something I think of with my floral prints, but hey, it worked. So what I actually did was I used the reverse side. This is the front side. It has sort of a cobblestone look, or maybe a reptile look, if you will. But the back side has the edges that are raised, and I just thought they gave a little bit different kind of texture to it. I really didn't think I wanted this side on there, so I flipped it over and used the other. So what I actually did was I put just that flap into my embossing folder, made sure these were closed in, and I disobeyed one of our rules. Our rule is when you're using the embossing folders, always put the seam side in first, because as it presses, there's pressure over here, and if it's open, it's not going to break. If you're doing it the other way, it's going to put pressure more on the fold, and it might end up tearing it. Occasionally, I will put it in sideways, but again, it's not going to give too much pressure over here. So the few times that I do this, I think it's okay. So I was able to put it in my large cut and emboss machine this way, so I could get that flap embossed as well. So a little trick for that. All right, and this time I just left this plain. This one is embossed, and just kind of leaving this one just a little bit more plain and simple. And you can decide which flap you want to have over the top too. It really doesn't matter which way, just more likely open left to right from the top. But because this already had the paper on it and I decided to emboss this, just seemed to go the other way. I thought that came out really nice. There's just that little tiny hint of green from the leaves, which is also from that die set. Okay, now the fourth rendition here. You know you don't just get one when you're looking at my tutorials here. So I like to try many different ways with the same idea, the same sketch, the same layout, same fold, and then just think of many ways to vary it. So here we go. I had one of these already in my stash. I keep a little bin of things that I intended to use on another card, but maybe didn't get to, or stamped extra. So I already had this, the stitched rectangle with, this came from the Poppies set, already colored in. I said, all right, I wanted to use the red on here. I thought that worked out really well. So I just popped this up with the dimensional dots. Again, I chose the right side because I didn't want this here. I wanted this to be more the background. Obviously, the flowers are prettier. So that's why I didn't put the poppy over here. So I chose to do this. This is the back side of the DSP, and I thought that looked really nice. So, but now I said, well, if I have this here, it would be difficult to have a belly band, but I really didn't like how it doesn't stay closed without something. So then, remembering how I closed one of my other cards, I decided to use the smallest die from the Stitch So Sweetly, pop that out, and I put 3 small black dimensionals on the back, and that's going to be a little latch closure to stick the corner right in there. So because this is raised up, there's space to get that little corner in there to hold it closed. So what I want to do is take the backs off, and I see the way I just randomly put them on there, there's a little bit more space here. So I'm going to have this side where my corner is going to tuck in. And I'm going to kind of feel how far in that goes so I don't put it too close or too far away. I'm going to touch it to the foam dots there, but then pull it out just a little bit. And that way it should give me just enough for that corner to catch. And enough to hold it. Okay, so now I thought we need a little something on there, so keeping with the black and white, I'm going to use one of the pearls. Use my Take Your Pick tool to pick one of those pretty pearls up, and I'm going to stick that right there. Reminds me of a little doorknob or something like that. All right, so I thought that was really pretty. And you know what, now that I'm thinking about it, this is a little bit of empty space here. I'm going to take a couple of these tiny pearls. I'm going to bring that over to here too. Just add 2. It's kind of nice to have things in 3s. All right, so how pretty is that? Very nice, right? And then on the inside, I didn't decorate on anything on the inside yet, but I probably will. But just to give you another idea of a closure, just tuck that right in. Okay, so how beautiful are all those? Each one slightly different. This one I stamped right on the belly band, as you can see. So a lot of different options here. This one doesn't have a sentiment on the outside. You can always add something or just keep your message for the inside. And remember, they all use the pretty patterned paper that you can get for free, absolutely free during celebrations. Through the end of September, spend $50 and you can pick anything from the Celebrations catalog, Celebrations brochure, and this is one of the free choices that you can get. 12 by 12 sheets of paper. You get 12 sheets, 4 of each of the patterns. So you have one graphic side and you have a floral side. So you see each of those were represented in my cards today. So hope you liked the video. And if you did, don't forget to give me a thumbs up down below. I really appreciate it. And leave a comment. Tell me which one you like the best. I really can't decide. They're all very unique. So you tell me which one you like. And don't forget to head on over to stampwithlorraine.com and you can see more ideas for your stamping projects. Bye-bye now.